So it had a stellar cast with established British actors, veterans, young up-and-coming actors, beautiful men, beautiful women. And it could have been a big hit, but the Gulf War kind of stopped his momentum to such a way that it never recovered. Now, Dan Curtis tried the Dan Curtis approach with this series. It was also referred to as Dark Shadows, a revival, but we're going to call it Dark Shadows, the 1991 TV series. This Gothic soap opera aired on NBC from January 13 to March 22nd, 91. It was a reimagining of the 66-71 ABC daytime soap opera Dark Shadows, which had a lot of fan and critical acclaim. The revival, again, was developed by the great Dan Curtis, creator of the original series. The 91 Dark Shadows tells a streamlined version of the original storyline. The arrival of Governess Victoria Winters at the great estate of Collingwood in Collinsport, Maine, vampire Barnabas Collins being released from his coffin, Dr. Hoffman's attempt to cure him of his vampirism, and finally Victoria's time travel back to 1790 to witness the events in which the still human Barnabas is transformed into an undead creature. Now, the great Gene Simmons plays the matriarch of the house, with Ben Cross as Barnabas, the very calmly Joanne Golan as Victoria, and of course Joseph Gordon-Levitt in one of his early appearances as a shit disturber David, and Roy Fiennes of Invaders fame is there as well. Having declined several previous inquiries about reviving Dark Shadows, Curtis was contacted by NBC's then head of programming, Brandon Tartikoff, in the summer of '87. The reluctant Curtis was eventually persuaded by Tartikoff, who wouldn't let up. On the revival, he said the essential characters and relationships are the same, but he thinks the two are different. I thought I could rely on those old scripts, but I found they were full of crazy plots that we couldn't use. So all the incidents are different. We arrive at similar points through a much different route. According to Curtis, he co-wrote and directed the first 5 episodes himself to get it off in the style I wanted. However, Curtis received co-writing credit on only 2 completed episodes. The revival series was produced by MGM, whose parent company had produced the 2 earlier theatrical films, House of Dark Shadows and Night of Dark Shadows, which is now owned by Warner's True Turner. A majority of the series was filmed at the Graceland Park and Mansion in Beverly Hills, California, and the same period wardrobe from the '88 film Dangerous Liaisons was used. Now, Barbara Blackburn played Carolyn Stollard, Jim Fife played Winnie Loomis, Joanna Going played Victoria Winters and Josette Dupre, Joseph Gordon-Levitt played David and Daniel Collins, Victoria Lauren played Sarah Collins, Ellie Pujol played Maggie Evans, Dr. Julia Hoffman, who's played by the great Barbara Steele, Roll Tynes played Roger Collins and Reverend Trask, Michael T. West played Joe Haskell, Gene Simmons again played Naomi and Elizabeth Collins Stoddard, Angelique was Lizetta Anthony, a very, very good performance, by the way. Supporting characters included a very, very young members of the cast, with Ellen Wheeler as Phillips Wick as the key supporting. Now, in episode 1, Victoria Winters arrives at Collinport, Gothic mansion on a cliff overlooking the ocean near the small Maine seaport town of Collinsport. She's recently hired governess to the troubled 10-year-old David Collins. David's father, Roger, distrusts her, but his mysterious widowed sister, Elizabeth, is more hospitable. The simple and troublemaking groundskeeper, Willie Loomis, nephew of Collingwood housekeeper Mrs. Johnson, is convinced of an old Collins family legacy, a buried treasure, and breaks into the Collins family crypt, accidentally releasing Barnabas from his 200-year crypt. Barnabas would introduce him as a distant relative from England and begins to romance Victoria. At the same time, the town of Collingsport is beset by a series of deadly attacks. So we got a 23.6 share, the number 30th episode of the series. Now, episode 2 got 21.1. It was consistent all the way through, but it dropped in episode 4 and couldn't recover from the, like I said, the low tens on the ratings. Now, Dark Shadows premiere is a 4-hour miniseries event on January 13 to 1491, then moved to a regular Friday night schedule and was picked up by CBC as well. The series debuted to great success, averaging a 22 share for the first 3 episodes. But due to the onset of the Gulf War, which was fully televised at the same time as Dark Shadows on most stations, including NBC, the latter station was frequently forced to interrupt or move broadcasts. For this reason, the show faltered as ratings declined, and struggled to keep his audience. In addition to the war, some fans blamed the declining ratings on the focus of NBC's promotion would ride upon horror and vampire themes rather than the romantic fantasy elements. With the 12th and last episode of the season ranked 64th among 83 shows, Dark Shadows was cancelled. NBC received over 7,000 letters of protest from disappointed fans, who also picketed the network headquarters in both LA and New York City. Now, the original VHS release from MPI Video features an extended pilot episode, an extended final episode, and also presents the original 1-hour versions of episode 2 and 3. For broadcast, NBC combined them in a movie-length version, so it could air that and the pilot as a 2-night miniseries to kick off the series premiere. So the home video presentation of episode 3 restores the I'm Victoria Winters opening narration that was left out of the movie-length version. The 1-hour version of these 2 episodes are also the ones that were shown when the series was repeated on Sci-Fi. The DVD release from MGM, although remastered in high definition, contained alterations to the original image presentation. Firstly, the overall image was cropped from the original full screen to a widescreen ratio. Secondly, after remastering, certain scenes that were shot day for night were incorrectly left untreated, presenting the problem of a vampire walking around in broad daylight. Also, this release presented the episodes the way they were shown on NBC, meaning episodes 2 and 3 were the movie-length version, and the unaired footage from the MPI release was not included at all, not within the context of the episode or even as a bonus feature. The deleted film footage from the VHS release can be seen on YouTube. Now, the DVD version has been re-released in 2009 since that time in different packaging. Now, Dark Shadows has been shown in reruns on a Sci-Fi channel in Chiller, and of course in Canada on Amazon Prime. Since 2009, the series had been available for viewing online on Hulu, but it was removed sometime later, but it's a big part of the Amazon Prime in Canada. Now, talking about the old series, Jonathan Frid had a certain sexuality to him. Like I said, where he's there, and like everybody that is around him, the women, become fascinated about him because he's a gentleman, but he's not the most handsome guy, but he's just romantically attractive. With Ben Cross, he's a little bit more handsome, but he's more aggressive. And the Ben Cross version of this comes off as slightly bisexual. There was a friend of mine in Campbellton, New Brunswick, who watched the series. He said, even though Jonathan Frid was gay in real life, he came along as masculine, but Ben Cross, there were certain facial tics and all that, seemed like he was like bisexual, and that wasn't really explored. But for me, I think Jonathan Frid is a big shoes to fill, and Ben Cross, although a great actor, couldn't fill them. But to see Gene Simmons chew up the scenery, and Gene could really act. You look at, she was on Star Trek The Next Generation around that same era. It was a pleasure to see such a great actress. And Barbara Steele, too. Who's better than Barbara Steele? So, and I think she was underused a little bit, too. But Joanna Going, it's not Jamie Gertz, by the way. Joanna Going, one of the most beautiful women of the early 90s on TV. My dad always say, if you want to test somebody about what type of actress they like, Joanna Going can draw in the young men and the older men. Like, she's gorgeous. Anyway, a very, very cinematic series. Sorry, what they should have done is made TV movies of it over so many months, and did something like a movie of the month. That would have been great, like a Saturday date night approach. Dan Curtis, again, what a creator and what a writer, and like I said, when it worked this series, Dan Curtis was the reason why. The first few episodes, it felt like the old show. It felt more like the movies, actually, because I'm a big fan of both of the movies. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing with screenshots and remote control, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share. Bye.